Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, then we'll just roll.
Yeah.
I know you're good at this, so
I
you no
I
problem.
I love doing podcasts, but I love
Yeah.
being on other people's podcasts better.
Ah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much. All right, well, we will go ahead and get started. Welcome to The Hook with Sarah Larsen. I am your host, Sarah Larsen, and my guest today is John Bundy with Morning Fuel Media. So, you want to tell us what Morning Fuel Media is? We'll start with just a little intro from you.
Okay, well, cool. Yeah, Morning Fuel Media is a way to alleviate headaches, really. A lot of folks have the headache now. Social media has been for a while, but it's kind of compounded lately in a way that folks have been told and are continuing to be being told that you need to post constantly and you need to have content out there daily across multiple platforms, and it needs to be video, and you need to do, and that freaks people out. And we've put together a little method of helping small business owners to collect custom video content in a batch form, meaning collecting it all in one sitting, kind of over a couple hours, that they can then post for the entire rest of the month. So we offer that service, and then also in that we also teach. So yes, we want our clients to stick around, but we also love to be able to say, hey, you got this? And then they go with it, and then on to the next client. So we do that. We also teach classes on social media and podcasting. So we're having a lot of fun, and I get to work with my daughter and my wife. I'm in heaven.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And I love the messaging. If that doesn't tell you a little something about John's knowledge of marketing, we solve headaches.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I love
We're
that.
better than Advil. We're better than Tylenol.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really great.
Cool.
Well, I'm going to regress us a little bit because I want to get some background on you. Where did you grow up? What was your family situation like? Tell us a little bit about that.
All right, I grew up on Long Island, New York, more specifically Middle Island, more specifically Shirley.
Okay.
So I my younger years were in South Shirley, and then we moved to North Shirley, so not very far. And so I'm a child of the '80s, and we grew up on the streets. It was like come home from school, mom was like, I don't want to see you till the lights come on.
Right.
Out on the street poles, and then so rode bikes, did stupid stuff that young boys do, lots of stupid stuff. Thank God I'm still alive. And so from there, junior year of high school, my parents moved us to Virginia. It took me a long time to forgive them for that, because I went to the same school district my whole life. So I moved from the largest high school in Suffolk County, Long Island, to Tab. Culture shock. Everyone wanted to hear me speak. And at the time I had a New York accent, and I've kind of hidden that over the years because I was tired of people asking me to say things. Like, say hot dog. And then they heard me cuss a lot with the accent, and they loved that even better. But yeah, so I was kind of antisocial in high school, and then long story short, I had a tremendous spiritual experience. I met Jesus for the first time, even though I went to church my whole life. I did not know him. And at that point, I changed my ways, and I met my wife, and we have two beautiful daughters. Oldest is now 24, youngest is 17, going on like 30. And we work together, so it's amazing.
That's fantastic. And I've met Kimberly. She's so fantastic. I'm so glad. And your wife, Sarah, as well.
They're amazing.
They're really a great crew.
To put up with my shenanigans.
Well, and not everybody can work with their spouse or their family in general. And so that says a lot about you. It says a lot about them. I think it's really amazing.
Lots of prayer.
Yeah. And I did not know you were from Long Island originally, because yes, you're right, that accent is pretty thin.
I had to make it go away.
Yeah. Well, I understand that. My husband grew up in this area of Virginia, and he moved to Northern Virginia with his first wife, and they both grew up in this area, and he said when they got to Northern Virginia, she said, and we've got to lose the accents.
Right.
Because
this ain't South no more, is
right,
it?
you're not in the South, but it's so funny because when he gets around his dad and others that have very strong accents, he falls into it. I can always tell when he's on the phone with his dad, because I hear it, the accent comes out.
Yeah, I
Does
just
that
have to
happen to
visit.
you?
I just have to visit my cousins for a day or two. I come back and I'm back. I've got the New York accent back, so
That's
it's interesting.
great.
My dad pretty much has this kind of. He's always had this kind of like. No, you couldn't tell where he came from. He didn't have an accent, but my mom had a very thick Irish, New York accent. So yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, so in listening to your story, I hear two kind of disruptions, and that is
Okay.
a conversation
I like this.
that I love to have. So the first is moving from New York to Virginia, which
Yeah.
was a huge shock to your
Oh,
system.
yeah,
It
it
sounds
was.
like.
Yeah, I hated it. I love
So
it now. But
how
I hated
did
it then.
how did you manage that? Like what in you mentioned that the culture shock and
Sure.
the people asking you to
Well, what do we
just
do?
to
What do we
say
do?
things in your
Yeah.
accent,
Well,
but
what do we do when we enter a room? Say
Mhm.
we're networking.
Yeah.
We look for people that are like us. So I found people that were like me. Loved having fun, getting into trouble, and then that's pretty much when my drug and alcohol experience started.
Okay.
But I found a couple guys that were just as antisocial as me, just as kind of crazy in the head, and it was not a good time in my life. It was a lot of fun, but then when I started getting older, having more responsibilities, I didn't grow up,
Yeah.
and so I spent a lot of time in my early 20s just doing stupid stuff and not really caring about anybody but myself. And like I said, until I had that experience that I had where I ran into myself and pretty much in my mind knew where I was going,
Yeah.
there was a lot of kind of just trying to figure out how I can be a better person and struggling with that because naturally my nature was not. I was very selfish and really didn't even know really how to care about other people.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. So the second disruption that I noticed was when you said, I found Jesus.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
really got to know him. So
Oh man.
that sounds like, let me go back up just a minute. When you moved and
Yes.
you had this experience where you're in this new place and didn't feel like you fit in and so you leaned into the darker side of life, shall we say?
Certainly did.
What did you feel an identity shift when you moved here? Was that something that you felt and you were creating a new identity when you arrived? Like
No, I
after you
was
moved here,
still
or did
the
you already have
same
that
guy,
and you just
but-
found people that were like that here?
Right. I really tapped into my dark side at that point because I didn't have the family. So, big, when we did holidays, we did holidays. So Easter was at my Nana's house. Christmases was at and it was the entire family, extended
Okay.
family plus.
Wow.
So when we moved here, holidays were gone.
Yeah.
And so that was that hit my sisters and I hard. And we moved here because of my dad's work. So
Okay.
he had we were able to get twice as much house and he
Yeah.
got paid a bunch more, but yeah, so it was one, I don't like being here. I don't like the people. I found a couple guys that, were just as, deviously destructive as I was. So that went on, for a couple of years. It was even after graduation, and then, into my early 20s, going into college, was just that selfish, destructive, didn't even care. I wouldn't have said this at the time, but I really didn't even like myself.
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I think that's where it kind of starts.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the transition? Tell me what happened.
Okay. Well, I won't get into all the
Yeah.
details.
What you're
but-
comfortable with.
So I was heavily into drugs. My friends and I were experimenting with LSD. I went with a friend to a new girlfriend, or I wanted her to be my girlfriend, up in Williamsburg, and was around some new people. And my buddy that I went with said he didn't want to be there, so he left, and I was there alone with people that I really didn't know. And I began to, in my mind, I don't know exactly how the science of the whole thing works, but on LSD, in my mind, I was in a place where people wanted to hurt me. So I imagined them to be witches, and I ran out of that place, and it was probably after midnight in the early AM in Williamsburg, in a dimly lit neighborhood where I didn't know where I was. In that experience, I'll just kind of nutshell it here, but in that experience, I was dead. And I was, thanks to my love of literature, I had read Dante's Inferno. I was in one of the levels of hell.
Oh my gosh.
And I was waiting for pretty much judgment. Where am I going? And I'm talking to myself that whole time. And I realized, I'm going to hell. But at that moment, I heard in my ear my voice, and again, I don't know how the chemicals work, but I heard my voice when I was in preschool singing Jesus Loves Me. And at that moment, I said, yes, Jesus is the way. And then that started I didn't accept him at that point, but that started my search of, I started going back to church. It still wasn't right. I didn't, so I started to, experimenting instead of with drugs, I was experimenting with other denominations. Yeah. So I started popping around, I kind of tasting everything. And then I just found the place that was the people my age. And, instead of a choir and pipe organ like I grew up with, it was a band, and the music was good. And this is different. And people that actually cared to listen to me and minister to me. And then I just remember on my knees, after reading a tiny little book called My Heart Cries Home, on my knees in my bedroom in tears, accepting Christ as my Lord. And the roller coaster ride starts, because I went into depression and anxiety and all kinds of stuff. But I always felt the drawback, like he was there with me. And I realized that he was the whole time. So
you had a really strong why, essentially, to keep you on the path.
Right, yeah. Growth. My why at the time was I didn't want to go to hell. Eventually that turned into, wow, I'd really like to share my faith with other people, especially my family, and like that. So, yeah.
Oh, what a great story, John.
Yeah, thanks for letting me share it. I don't get to share it often. I'm always interviewing other people.
Yeah, I know, but people need to hear your story because it's incredible.
Cool.
That's so awesome. So, you obviously at some point meet your wife.
Yes.
And you guys get married.
Yeah, I met her at a karate dojo in Yorktown.
As if that was question mark at the end, as if that, did you get married?
She's
your wife?
Okay. Yeah, she said yes. And actually her sister said say yes, and then she said yes. And so, but still very irresponsible, young in Christ, very, very immature man, and who thinks he knows some things. But so 25 years married this October. And again, like the love of my life. I mean, really, and I want to spend the rest of my life with her. And I'm planning, like, okay, what are we gonna do? We want to travel the States and do some things we haven't done before. So
absolutely. Well, and you've created a career that you could actually continue doing while you do that.
That's
if you wanted
a cool thing about it, and I'm just realizing that just within the past maybe even 6 months that I can be anywhere. And I was the 2 weeks in October, and this past 2 weeks I was in Puerto Rico.
Yeah,
working.
Is amazing. I'm a little jealous.
You should go. I know a lady, my sister, who has really, really cool Airbnbs, and they're amazing.
That's right. Oh, very cool.
The best postcard sunsets you'll ever see in your life.
Cool. Well, that's definitely on my to-do list.
Yes. All right.
I love it. So, speaking of your career, what did you do? What were you doing that led you to today?
My daughter said that she wanted to be a YouTuber, and I was working at NASA at the time. I wasn't a rocket scientist. I was doing inspections. We were under NASA. It was in the bowels of NASA. They have tunnels below NASA that have been there since the thing started. It's nasty. But so she said she wanted to be a YouTuber, and at first I was like, no, you're 13 years old. You're not going to be a YouTuber. But she wanted to talk to her friends about her faith and about things that she's going through as a girl and all that kind of stuff, and she can write. So I was her producer, director, editor, kind of creative director. And so we did her YouTube channel, Kimberly Faith TV. It's actually still on YouTube. And she's got some great word for 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, at the time. She still does her own thing, but she's mostly on Instagram. And she actually started a podcast recently called Clipper Strong Podcast, and it's for her school. She's kind of helping her underclassmen overcome their fears of senior year, and teachers and counselors are being interviewed on, so it's really cool. But she was the one that kind of started us into the media. I've done graphic art and design for 20 plus years. I knew a little bit about editing and like that. So once we started doing it, and I love to network, I love to hear people's stories. So I kept hearing over and over again, hey, I mean, can you do that for me? You know, can you do the video? Can you do the social media? So we started a little thing. At the time it was called Scribe Design back in 2019. And then I started the podcast. My wife at one time told me that I have a face for radio. So I was like, okay, let me show you. And so I started doing the podcast, which I realize now I should have started earlier.
Sure.
Because over the years, people have said you need to do something with your voice. And I tried. I tried radio.
You do have a great voice.
Thank you. I tried to get into radio. It just didn't work. And I tried to do some voiceover stuff. Every once in a while, volunteer for church or something like that. But now I'm doing it for a living.
Well, and you're doing it well.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
And I'm so thrilled that we got to meet because we were running in the same networking circles.
Yeah.
And then ended up in the York County Chamber together. Yeah. And so it's great because I so many people come to me now and they're like, oh, I got interviewed on John's podcast.
Oh, yeah,
that's so exciting.
Awesome.
Somebody just this morning told me that.
Guests. I had the best guests.
Yeah. So that's great. And I got to be on your podcast, which was so fun. And that's when I got to learn about this. So where are things going? You've created this media company essentially, and what does the future hold?
Well, just more of the same. So we love what we do. We love helping small businesses. I love hearing people's stories. I am going to launch another podcast.
Great.
I'll continue to do Morning Fuel podcast, which is, asking folks why they do what they do, especially small business owners, ministers, missionaries. We're starting to get into that as well. But the new one's going to be called What the Fail, and it's going to be about people's failure stories that then led to success. So we'll do a little bite in the beginning of a famous failure, like Abraham Lincoln, for example.
Yeah.
How many times did he run for office and fail in business and stuff like that? And then, one of the great presidents of the United States, so different things that we'll share a little bit like that, and then we'll get into other folks. Tell us when you were at your bottom, when you're at the, the bottom, what happened or whatever. Those that are brave enough to share those stories, because I think that we don't understand. And again, I say this on Morning Fuel, and our stories ultimately don't belong to us.
Yeah.
If we keep them to ourselves, they become rotten. But when we share them with other people, people get brave. And they start that thing that they've had on the back burner for a long time. So that's my heart. That's what I want to do. Perhaps folks will sponsor the podcast. That'd be cool. Then it would allow me to do more.
Yeah.
I look up to Mike Rowe. If you know Mike Rowe of Dirty Jobs, and now he's doing How America Works and a few other different things. He's got a foundation really helping folks to realize that the trades are dying. The amount of people that are going into welding and things like that, they're not doing that because they just want to do social media all day. But so he's one of those guys. He had a show called Returning the Favor. It was a Facebook. It was only on Facebook. It was a Facebook TV thing, but it got taken down. I don't know why. It was like the best show that I've ever seen.
Does Facebook TV still exist?
I'm not. I think that's maybe why it doesn't. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But so he's no longer. But the premise of the show was, phone in, tell us who's doing good in the community. We're going to go out there, pretend we're doing a documentary about them, and collect information to find out what they need to do. And then at the end, they bless them with like all the tools they need and remodel their business and kind of all that stuff. And then it's this big surprise at the end. So Returning the Favor. I want to do a local one called Give It Back. Or Giving It Back or something like that, and kind of just, he would go all over the nation, but I love this area, so I would think Hampton Roads, and do that same type of show where I get people to just sponsor these people doing good in the community and then surprise them kind of like that. But Mike Rose, he's just awesome. I'd love to meet him.
Yeah. Oh, I love that story.
I don't even know if I answered your question.
No, you did. Well, no, that's absolutely. Absolutely you did. The other thing that I wanted to touch on, because you told me this before, but I really wanted to share it since we are kind of redoing this months later from our original conversation.
Yeah, that was when we...
And that is the origin of the name Morning Fuel.
Okay. Yeah, so morning fuel to me is what gets you up in the morning, and why do you do what you do? So that powers us through the day. Of course, it's the why. Ultimately, it's the why, right? My morning fuel is, wanting to provide for my family. My fuel that gets me up in the morning is the time that now. I mean, how long did it take? So I heard my pastor said that discipline turns into delight. So when you discipline yourself in an area, eventually you'll get to the point where you look forward to that thing that you're doing or the results of that thing you're doing. For example, I never liked to run, but I was going through some bout of depression and anxiety. I read a book called My Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod, and I began to run. The having run was the feeling that I wanted to. The running sucked.
Right.
So now that I knew for a long time I needed to get into the Word. I need to know this Jesus that I say that I love and worship, right? So I got into the Word. It was a drudgery. I mean, especially when you get to a list of names that's like chapters long. Good day, I can't even pronounce the name. But now it's like I skipped a meal if I don't do that. So my morning routine, I get up in the morning, I sit in silence for like 15 to 20 minutes, and then I pray, then I get into the Word, then I do yoga, then I take a cold shower. When I miss those things, I miss those things. So that's part of my fuel. That morning fuel is that's part of that. But then the why is my family and providing for my family. That's the fuel that keeps me going. So yeah, it's fun.
I love. I love
it's
that
become
story.
fun.
So I wanted to be able
It used
to
to
share that
suck.
again.
Work used to be really, really hard. Now Monday's one of my favorite days because all day Sunday I'm like, I got these ideas, I got to do these things, and then Monday is like, okay, I get to do it. So.
Yeah, one of my clients told me she has created a creative CEO day, and that's her Monday, and that's the day that she's fresh from the weekend,
right?
And so she spends the day creating all the things that she needs for her business, and
no doubt.
I love that.
Right.
So it sounds like you kind of, without knowing that there was a name for it,
right,
are doing that.
Right. It's wild. Sometimes when we get in a tough spot, we do a little bit of research to figure out. So, for example, you have an ache and pain. Like me, I don't like to take medicine, so I immediately go to holistic remedies, or how do you do this at home kind of thing.
Right.
And so you do these studies, and when I was realizing some of my brain fog was due to lack of potassium. So what do? I take potassium, and it worked. So that's those things. I'm always, if there's a little bit of an issue, I start to research how are other people taking care of that. The book by Hal Elrod, that My Miracle Morning, he went to all the most successful people in the world and figured out what do they all have in common. Well, it was the morning routine. They wake up early. They do this thing. They all do this thing. They all do this same thing. And there were like 5 or 6 things that they all did. So he started doing that and started seeing some success. So, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Something else came to mind. So you mentioned earlier that business owners don't have to post on social media all the time and do all the things. And that's something that I like to think about, is how we do things that because somebody said we should. This is what the shoulds of owning a business and things like that. I think even morning routine, everybody's going to have a different version of that, right?
Sure.
What do you have a recommendation as far as when it comes to your neck of the internet, let's say? What do you guys recommend for your clients when it comes to putting out there? Is that
okay? Well, yeah, I definitely don't want to be misunderstood on this. I really do believe that you need to be consistent and you need to do something often, if you want to reach people on social media, because that's the algorithm. If you don't have anything going on, like internet's like a noise in the neighborhood. So if there's a noise going on over here, the algorithm goes, oh, okay, what's going on over here? And then there's action here. There's more people. There's people gathering. So then they start to increase it. So yes, you do need to do it often.
Mm-hmm.
You do need to do it consistently. And that's why we do what we do. So if you yourself don't have the time as a business owner to put in the time to do that, there are solutions. We are just one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and our done for you service is something that we can do that consistently keeps you out there. The collection that only takes you like 2-3 hours a month, and then we kick in where we're editing that and creating little bits that go out all month long.
Okay.
So that's important. So yeah, don't get me wrong on that. And then and then don't put all your eggs in one basket. I know folks that are just on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry for those folks. I don't think there's some of like, maybe they don't seem to be very happy to me. Twitter's kind of seemingly had been like this angry place. Like
Mm-hmm.
people go to complain and all that kind of stuff. But I would say just don't put all your eggs in one basket. Try the different places. One of our methods is we don't create a video that only works on LinkedIn and then have to create another one that only works on Instagram and then create another one that only works on TikTok. We create it in the best way that works across all those platforms. We create one video that works on all of the platforms. So that's another thing too. It doesn't have to be as hard as we make it to be. Also, and this might, sometimes we think it has to be nice and shiny. It has to be perfect before I put it out there. Now, done is better than perfect.
Yes.
So, and the algorithms recently at least are liking, and I guess people are liking more the videos that don't look that polished. The ones that, I can do that.
Right.
The ones with a little bit of a shaky camera movement or not the best lighting kind of thing. I think people would rather listen to something that better than the most perfect video. But if it looks like it's home done or it's authentic, it was done off the cuff, then those are videos that do better.
Yeah.
So those little things. Attend a lunch and learn. Go to one of our classes. We do have paid classes, and we offer everything that we know. So, everything we've
Absolutely.
learned. It's not everything that's out there, but everything that
Right.
we've learned.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and you guys have learned a lot because you are
Every
continuing
day.
to learn every day, right?
Every day.
I see that for sure.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much, John. This was
Wow,
so
thank you.
fun. I loved
Yeah,
getting
cool.
to
I love
sit
getting to
down
talk
with you
with you.
again. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
cool stuff.
I
And I'm so
appreciate
excited
you.
for your podcast, and
Thank you.
I can't wait to listen to your podcast.
Thank you. It's only a few weeks away,
Oh
so
yeah, can't
by the
wait.
time you're listening to this, obviously it's already out. But
Yeah, cool.
at this time, it's only a couple weeks away,
Yeah.
and I'm getting really excited.
Cool. You
So-
should be. Your trailer is amazing. So.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Where can people find you on the internet?
Okay, John Bundy Official on Instagram.
Okay.
Actually, and I didn't talk about this earlier, but Bundy-wan Kenobi on TikTok. So I'm a Jedi that reads the scripture on TikTok. So
Oh,
I took
that's
two things I love, Jesus
Love it.
and Star Wars. I put them together. And so then Morning Fuel Podcast and Morning Fuel Media across all of the platforms. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
you're
I
welcome.
appreciate everything you taught me so far.
Yay.
I am still learning as
All right,
well.
young
but
Padawan.
yes, I will consider myself your
You
student.
will be a Jedi before you know it.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. We will catch you on the next time. Bye. Catch you on the next time?
Yes. That's good. I like it. That's authentic.